on about there? Oh, I had a message from Esif Said himself. He is absolutely delighted that we're reading his book, and I'm just going to find his message. Take me a moment or two through my messages. Lovely to see him noticing that there are so many schools around the country who are reading Varjak Paw. It is just brilliant. And it's not his only book either. Right, he said, brilliant. Thank you for reading Varjak to them. Please say hello to them all for me and tell them, keep the way alive. It's a message from SF Side there, 2 Year 3 at Robertswood. You heard it here. Right, it's 2 o'clock. Let's get on with Varjak Paw. Chapter 23. So we heard in chapter 22 that he has discovered the moving circle. Let's see what he does with the moving circle now that Jalal has said to him, now, wake up! Chapter 23. Varjak woke from his dream in the alley. It was night time again. He and Holly had slept through the day. A streetlight buzzed on and off behind him. A full moon, round and white as a saucer of milk, shone comfortingly up above, but it was quickly smothered by street black clouds. He needed to go to the litter tray. Holly was fast asleep, and they were still on Sally Bones's territory. Well, it was all outside, wasn't it? The whole world was his litter tray. He could go wherever he pleased. He slouched out of the shadows and did his business by a heap of rubbish. What a relief it was. His awareness tingled. The fur on the back of his neck prickled. It felt like he was being watched. He swiveled to face the back of the alley and immediately wished that he hadn't. A thin white cat sat there. She was licking her claws, watching him with one ice blue eye. Where the other eye should have been was an empty socket. Her fur was spotless clean, but around her was the smell of darkness, of dank and deadly things and places. There's a picture of Sally Bones. By her side prowled a dozen street cats, thick-necked and bristling, grimy as the city itself. They were bigger than the white cat, but somehow they looked like soft little kittens beside her. Again, I'll show you. There's cats beside. There's Sally Bones in the middle, and these cats either side of her looking like kittens next to Sally Bones. Good. Was it sunny? She asked. Varjak couldn't answer. He kept staring at her, unable to speak. She was all muscle and bone. He could see her ribs. They jutted out as if they were trying to escape from her. Now, this isn't your territory, she said, flexing her bone-white claws, and you shouldn't ever do what you've just done, all over someone else's territory, especially if that someone else is me. She smiled. A crooked smile, but her single eye stayed cold and hard. He had no doubt who he was looking at, nor do we? No wonder poor Tam was terrified of Sally Bones. Speak when the boss talks to you, growled a stripy Tom with slash marks all over his face. Varjak recognised him, and I'm sure we do too. It's Razor. Holly stood up beside Varjak. He didn't mean it, she said. He's new here. Her legs quivered, but her voice was steady. New, is he? Said the white cat. Her tail swished angrily. She nodded at the stripy Tom. Razor, why wasn't I told about this? The Tom began to shake. I didn't think it was important, boss. He's just a pet. The air seemed to shimmer for a moment, and then Razor howled and clutched his face. There was a new, fresh slash mark across one side, and the cat's white claws were tipped with blood. "It's not your job to think, Razor," she hissed. "It's your job to tell me everything, and if you can't do your job, I'll find someone else who can. Understood?" Razor nodded, still clutching his face. In that moment of quiet, Varjak could hear his own heart thumping in his throat. "Now, get some information out of this new cat," spat Sally Bones. "I have a feeling he's something to do with the vanishings. Luger and Wes, you two, watch his little friend." Razor and the other two cats came towards Varjak and Holly. Holly's ears twitched nervously. "Why couldn't you wait till we get home?" she whispered. "We've had it now." "We could make it over those walls," said Varjak, searching for a way out. "They'd only catch us. At least Razor's doing it." "Not her." Holly shivered. "Just don't tell them about my alleys, okay?" Razor marched up to them, eyes slitted, claws glinting. The slash on his face was red and raw. "What's your name, troublemaker?" he snarled. "Varjak Paw." "Where are you from?" "Mesopotamia." Razor's scarred face twisted into a scowl. "Very funny. Where are you really from? Where do you sleep?" Varjak glanced at Holly. What could he do? Anything he said could give her secret away. He could only keep it by staying silent. "Are you going to open up?" said Razor. His mouth curled back, baring his teeth. "Or do I have to open you up?" There was no sound at all in the alley except the street light's buzz. Varjak kept his mouth shut. They all stared at him. Razor, Sally Bones, her gang, all staring at him. Varjak felt boxed in and alone. The pressure mounted in his head, but he stared straight back at Razor without a word. He was determined not to look away. "Well?" demanded Razor. The Tom's eyes burned into him, but Varjak hung on. "Don't look away. Don't let him win. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on." Somewhere in the distance a monster roared. Razor blinked and looked away. Varjak relaxed, and in that instant something slashed his cheek. Razor's claws. Varjak reeled back, stunned. His head was on fire. "I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget," growled Razor. He came forward. Varjak lashed out. The street cat dodged easily and jabbed his paw in return. Blood sprayed from Varjak's face in a thick red fountain. Another hit to the face. Varjak's legs felt weak. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Holly start to move, but Luger and Wes moved faster, blocking her off. It was just him and Razor. "Not so tough now, are you?" spat Razor. "I can finish you any time. I'm going easy on you. Now talk." He slammed Varjak's ribs, knocking him off balance. Varjak staggered into the rubbish heap. It squelched around him. He was still standing, but he couldn't take another hit. Moving circles. The fifth skill. You can dodge any blow. You can strike any enemy. It was his only chance. Varjak breathed as Razor came in for the kill. 1, 2, 3, 4. Energy pulsed in Varjak's belly. Out. 2, 3, 4. Time slowed down. In 2, 3, 4. Razor struck in slow motion. Out, 2, 3, 4. Varjak made a moving circle. In, 2, 3, 4. Razor missed. Out, 2, 3, 4. This is good, thought Varjak Paw. He could see the others staring at him. Holly's mouth hung open in surprise. Razor bared his teeth, came in again, moving as if through mud. Varjak opened his circle, let loose the energy, and hit Razor with everything he had right between his eyes. Excuse me. It's the end of the chapter. I'm going to have a quick drink. And on with chapter 24. Razor's head jerked back. Varjak had struck his target. But the big Tom was strong. It was only enough to daze him. He stepped out of Varjak's reach and shook his head, as if he couldn't believe he'd been hit. "Enough!" Sally Bones shouted. Varjak looked to the top of the alley, but she wasn't there. "Where did you learn that?" her voice demanded from behind him. He wheeled about. There was a faintest shimmer of white, but she was gone again. "Who taught you?" she hissed from somewhere inside his head. And before Jalal knew what was happening, she had him pinned flat on the ground, white bones above him, single blue eye burning into him. He lost the rhythm of his breath, and everything sped up again. He was out of slow time. "Answer me! Who taught you?" she said. He couldn't move. He couldn't hide. "Jalal!" he cried, helpless. Sally Bones's one eye glittered like the moon. "Jalal," she said. "Jalal the Paw. He's been dead 100 years. What could you know of Jalal? What do you know?" "Slow time," gasped Varjak. "Moving circles." "You!" Sally Bones blinked. Something that might have been fear flashed across her face. "Is it you?" Before Varjak could answer, a long, low growl filled the air. Everyone turned to face it. Have you any idea what this might be? Shall we see? At the top of the alley, blocking the way out, was a new kind of monster. It was black and bristly, almost as big as a man. Its mouth was full of pointed yellow teeth which dripped with drool. It barked loudly and took a step towards the cats. It's not a car, big as a man but not a man, and certainly not a monster as we'd know it. Terror ripped through Sally Bones's gang. Razor, Luca, Wes, they all bolted. They scrambled up the fire escapes and over the walls, away from the monster, away from the alley. "Come back!" screamed Sally Bones. "Cowards! We can beat it if we fight together!" But they weren't listening. Her gang scurried to safety as fast as they could. The thin white cat shook her head in contempt. She stood up reluctantly, letting Varjak go free. "We'll finish this another time, Varjak Paw," she said. There was a shimmer of white, and she was gone. In a single heartbeat, Varjak and Holly were alone with the monster. It looked confused. It barked to the walls, but didn't try to follow the cats up. "So those Sally Bones stories are true," breathed Holly. She shook her head. "I didn't know what was going on back there, but I'd swear you had them worried." Varjak's head was whirling. Sally Bones knew about Jalal. She knew about the way. Much more than he did. She wasn't even scared of this monster. "Thanks for keeping quiet about the alleys," said Holly. "Come on, let's get out of here before it gets us," she urged. The monster began to lumber towards them. Its big, blunt claws clacked on the pavement as it came. It was incredibly powerful. Even its tail looked as if it could knock them senseless. Varjak focused. What would Jalal do? Second skill. Awareness. He looked into its eyes. They were cloudy black. There was pain in those eyes, and there was fear, almost terror, in its scent. It barked, a deafening sound. Varjak didn't flinch. He just kept looking into its eyes. If he hadn't once stood before a adoring dog, he would have run away. But compared to those metal monsters, this frightened, barking animal was friendly. "What are you doing?" hissed Holly. "Let's go!" Varjak looked up. He could probably make it over a wall or onto a window ledge like Sally Burns's gang. He gambled instead and trusted his instincts. This time he wasn't going to run. He wasn't going to panic. He was going to stand his ground and face it down. "Don't be afraid," he said to the monster in the calmest voice he could manage. It opened its jaws. They were big enough to swallow him whole. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. And then it sprang at him. Slow time. And Holly leapt for cover, moving circles. But Varjak stood his ground. Shadow walking? Wrong. The monster smashed into him. The world turned upside down, and everything went black again. Right. And I think at that point, it's now 2:15, and I'm going to stop there because I am just exhausted with excitement at this story. And we'll begin again tomorrow with chapter 25.